Will you clap for me? Just one big clap. Perfect. So you started swimming at a young age.
Oh, I was 9 months old. Yeah.
Really?
And I went down my grandparents' water slide. If that's a snake, I'm going to freak out. It's probably a bird.
I'm going to freak out too. Oh. I can hear it.
I mean, I don't...
Maybe it should...
It's probably just like a mouse.
You think? I don't hear anything. Oh, God. I saw something, didn't you?
Sorry.
It's okay. Let's move.
You should see me when I see a shark.
Okay, let's move.
I've always loved adventure. Being wild in the wild. Bike is my favorite mode of transportation. And home, well, it's either a tent or a van or even a couch. Exploration has become my education, and dirt under my nails, now that's what I call a manicure. Solo adventuring within nature is where I found myself. I found confidence. I found love, connection, and independence. But when that was all taken away from me from an abusive relationship, I found myself crippled in the depths of trauma, filled with overwhelming pain and just utterly confused, with endless amount of questions like, how did I get here? Is there no one or nothing that can help? Why do others now see me as weak? And am I as alone as I feel? Unable to find the answers that I was desperately seeking, I just had to grab my camera, my pack, and I hopped on a train in search of others like me. This was my therapy. Another solo adventure into the unknown, but this time it was a film about 7 adventurous women who have faced trauma and how adventure aided within their journey throughout healing. But would they hold the answers I sought? Or was society right? Was I now just a helpless victim? I couldn't and I don't believe that lie, because I know there must be those among whom we can sit down and weep and still be counted as warriors.
Super accident prone growing up. I grew too fast or something, and I just never caught my balance. And that's why being in the water was always a really good thing for me.
Allie spent her entire childhood in the water. As a teen, she began to compete, which continued throughout high school. After graduation, Allie moved from San Diego to New York City to attend NYU. That's where she double majored in journalism and art history. And of course, Allie joined the swim team. That's where she met Coach Lauren, who began to call her Allie D. But due to injury after injury, Allie was unable to compete, but she never gave up.
Senior year, I had just been cleared to compete, but then started to have these recurrent sinus infections and having these crazy shoulder pain and having anxiety attacks to the point that I actually brought myself to the ER. I had enough credits to graduate early with 1 degree, so I did that and then kind of made the decision to come home and figure out my health. I found a knot on my neck right here. My doctor, he just did a simple chest x-ray and called while I was out called my mom, called the house while I was out on the retreat. And she kind of texted me and was like, "It's Hodgkin's." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "It's cancer." And I just called her and it was like, "What?" And I remember driving back from the retreat and just, you don't really know. It's kind of okay, I met with the doctor and the doctor's like, "This is what we're going to do. And we're going to do this. And you're going to be fine in 6 months." And so I was like, okay, great. So I was going to start chemo. I studied for the LSAT, but 6 months later, I found out that the chemo actually didn't work at all, and the cancer hadn't budged. And I think that's when it, like, the fight, like, the battle for my life actually began. And there were moments in that first 6 months where, like, we tried to go and get a wig, and it took about 3 times until I finally got a wig. And I remember just sitting in front of my mom had parked on the other side of the street from the store, and I remember sitting on the other side of the car, just like on the floor, like on the curb, just like crying, just being a woman, and it becomes part of your identity and you don't realize it. I lost everything. Eyebrows, the little baby hairs on your neck, I lost everything.
Allie would spend the next years undergoing rounds of intense chemotherapy, radiation, and a bone marrow transplant. But due to the uncertainties of young adult cancer, Allie was never declared in remission. Allie found that her swim coach, Lauren, wasn't so lucky. Lauren was diagnosed with colon cancer a few months before Allie's own diagnosis. This had brought the two of them even closer. Sadly, Lauren did not survive cancer. And on the flight home from her coach's memorial service, Allie couldn't help but think, this could have been her very own funeral. This drove Allie to do something. She had to do something. And this something had to embrace the memory of her beloved coach. It had to bring awareness to young adult cancer, and it had to be big.
I remember growing up in the game of life, there's a game piece that says Swim the English Channel. And so I knew it was something that nobody knows the complexities that go into it, similar to cancer, but it's something that you say it and they're like, wow, it's like universally understood as impossible or challenging.
Allie spent a year intensely training and fundraising for the channel. And finally, the moment arrived. September of 2012, Allie flew to England to swim a body of water that 1 in 5 people actually get a chance to attempt to swim. Not to finish, but to just attempt to swim. The pitch black, bitter cold waters have fierce waves known to capsize cargo ships. And that's on a good day. So day after day, Allie eagerly awaited to get into the beastie waters. But things were looking very grim.
Every day it was like, not tomorrow, love, but Friday looks good. And like Friday became Thursday, became Saturday, and then after like 2 weeks over there, I didn't have any more time off work and I had to make the call.
Despite her disappointment, Allie decided she would attempt the channel once again. This second chance meant another year of intense training. But Allie is all too familiar with second chances. When her first round of chemo didn't work, Allie didn't give up. And you know what? She wasn't about to now.
The recommitting part after I got home in 2012, that was the hardest part because I knew that everything that I had done the year before, I had to do better.
Once home, Allie took a much-needed break. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Allie became more and more hesitant to train. She could feel the channel slipping away. Then one night, a dear friend paid her a visit.
I was sitting in a waiting room and chairs are lined up. They're all mostly empty. One kid on the swim team, Brad. So he like walks out and he goes, it's time, she's ready for you. And I like stand up and I walk in the next room and my coach, she's like sitting there and her hair was long and blonde and she looked exactly like I remembered her. I like walked in there and I said, so I'm doing this thing. And she's just like, I know, and it's beautiful. And I like woke up and it must have been, 3 a.m. I like called my athletic trainer and I was like, we're doing it.
On August 28th, 2013, Allie D made her second attempt at swimming the English Channel.
You're on the boat. You're getting ready. It's 3 a.m. You're going to jump in the water.
Oh, yeah.
What's going through your head?
Let's do this. It's an extreme sport. If there's any doubt of mind when you look in the mirror, you shouldn't get in the water. Because when things go bad, they go bad really fast.
Swimming the channel is extreme, and it would prove it to Allie. She struggled to swim through shark-infested waters and actually swam through a school of jellyfish. All this while dodging the endless number of cargo ships that wouldn't have even noticed if they ran her over. And due to the toxic smell of diesel in the water, along with the 9-foot swells, Ellie vomited half her feet each time she tried to eat.
Nobody can touch you when you're in the middle of the ocean. That's just the rule. Throw you food on a P cord, like parachute cord, on a boat that's like rocking back and forth in 9-foot swells, and you're supposed to catch it, drink it, keep going. I had to really work hard to be able to take in even 6 ounces. And my hips are shot. Like, I knew what my weaknesses were, but I knew that every 30 minutes they were going to throw me a water bottle. And then I had the most beautiful sunrise ever. And there's something so hopeful of swimming from night into day. I was just really hopeful the whole time. I think I was singing. I have like a mishmash of country songs and like show tunes.
After her first failed attempt, and after 2 years of intense cold water ocean training, Ellie successfully swam the English Channel, and she did it in 11 hours and 14 minutes.
How did you feel after the channel? When you got in, you crawled up onto the rocks, right? Because it's not a beach.
Yeah.
What was going through your head?
Bacon. So yeah, I'm a dual citizen. And that was actually the icing on the cake. So when I swam the English Channel, I found out at the very end that no Italian woman had ever done it before.
After the Channel swim, Ellie wrote this to her blog. When I committed to the Channel, it was to say thank you when I couldn't say thank you enough. To Lauren, for being far more than a swim coach. To my family, who made sure I got where I needed to be. To my friends, who sat next to me in the hospital when I couldn't have been more ill. And to give back. For all the young adults with cancer who are still fighting for their lives, to let them know that someone is fighting for them, to give them the strength that they may not have known they had, and the inspiration to defy their illness.
There aren't any boundaries with cancer or with open water swimming. I mean, you don't know what's on the other side. But you just have to like trust yourself that you're doing everything that you can, like that you're moving in the right direction. I mean, I'm very grateful for cancer, and my outlook on it is just, I mean, the best way to get to know yourself is by throwing yourself into some sort of crazy situation.
So originally I had wanted to do something really great and grandiose. So I had decided that I was going to do a mountain bike trip that would encompass majority of the Canadian Rockies. And so the plan originally was to start in Fernie, British Columbia, and then to end in Kananaskis, Alberta, and to travel through that part of the Rockies. So we'd be going through places like Revelstoke, Golden, into like Glacier and Banff and Lake Louise, Banff, and then into Canmore. So it was going to be like a solo journey for myself.
Did you have any mountain biking experience before you put this together?
No, I had very little mountain biking experience.
So why would someone with such little mountain biking experience attempt to take on such an epic journey?
I was coping and managing and dealing with the unknown of death and loss. So in 2008, my mom died of ovarian cancer, and that had hit myself and my family very hard. And so what I decided that I wanted to do was I wanted to bring awareness of ovarian cancer, and also I needed to find a way for myself how I can essentially be okay with the diagnosis if I had the same gene mutation. So I had done all of my genetic testing and realized that the wait period was about 6 months long. And that's when I decided that it came to me that I was going to do this mountain biking trip. It was a way for me to deal with some of the unknowns for myself, and also I thought if I could film this as a documentary film to raise awareness of ovarian cancer, then I can do two things at once.
Do you ever make a documentary before?
I've never made a documentary before. I was terrified. I was terrified more because I was always high functioning, but I never really completed something of this nature before. So I was terrified for a number of reasons. I was terrified of being rejected or having my idea be like bigger than me. Also, at the time, I'd always associated athleticism with a certain type of body type, and I was not that body type. So I also thought, well, nobody's going to take me seriously because, this is, like chubby girl trying to like do something that only, like the skinny, super muscular athletes would do. So I did definitely have to struggle with a lot of demons. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do this on my own. And when I started to reach out to people, it just snowballed. Everyone just said yes to come on this like crazy adventure with me, with like this unknown person who could barely get herself out of like a mountainside. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what I was thinking.
To become more familiar with the bike, Deborah began an intense 16-week mountain bike training program.
I wanted to do it with as little my own personal risk as possible. I didn't want to fall and injure myself at any point during this because I wanted to succeed.
So when you did get into those moments where you had those newbie moments that we all have to go through to learn, but how did you get past those? Like, how did you like not get beat down by that?
I just laughed. That was just the way I dealt with everything. I just have to laugh it off. I mean, there were moments that I threw my bike, for sure. Like, I'd have like these moments of like total frustration. I would just grab my bike and I would just throw it, or kick it, or have total temper tantrums. But for the most part, yeah, I would just kind of laugh it off and just be like, what an idiot.
Then you move on.
But then you have to move on. Yeah. I also always knew that it was, that I was doing it for a bigger reason, and so I needed to get through it. I just couldn't be stopped at that time. About 6 weeks prior to like my scheduled departure date, I had a bad accident on a training ride, and I actually tore my ACL in my left knee. And I actually thought it was going to be over. I'm going to do everything that I can. I'm going to rehab it. I'm going to physio it as much as possible. And a really great physiotherapist, and she knew exactly what I needed. So she's like, okay, we're going to get you at least to that trailhead, and then we'll see where you're at.
Deborah moved her outdoor training indoors, where she focused on pain management while spinning her legs on the stationary bike. After 6 intense doubt-filled weeks, ready or not, it was time.
What was going through my head, literally, like, as I got on the plane was, I have no idea if I can actually even just, like, take this first pedal stroke. And it was a struggle, because it was actually really difficult. And it was painful, and I still did it.
Even though she was beyond excited to actually be riding the trails, Deborah still had chronic knee pain that slowed her down.
So one of the bigger, more challenging days, I just felt so beaten down. And then this butterfly came up and just sort of like kissed me. And it was like this big, like mammoth butterfly. And I was like, oh, I was just me and my swollen knee thinking like, oh, I have 4 more peaks to do. And this butterfly just came up to me and it was like, oh, I know you're here. Like, I know you're here for me. And I didn't know what it was. In some way, maybe I associated that it might have actually been my mother, if you believe in that. But that's what I wanted to believe in, that yeah, it was just encouragement and, yeah, just knowing that she was there.
Even with her mother's encouragement, Deborah continued to struggle. Pedal stroke after pedal stroke was filled with intense pain.
My motto with that was no mountain is larger than life. And that is what actually got me through. So every time I would be like climbing up a mountain thinking that, oh, I really just want to get off my bike. I want to get helicoptered down this thing. I'm done. I just always remembered that, that life was more important than just that in the moment pain that I was experiencing, that I was going to get over that. As I started to just pedal more and more, I just started going and I never looked back. I thought, if I can do it this day, then I'm going to do it tomorrow, and I'm going to do it the next day. I'm going to do it as many days, and it might take me a lot longer than I anticipated, but I'm going to do this.
Despite her injury and her extreme chronic knee pain, and through all the struggles, Deborah finally reached the last peak, accomplishing her epic goal of biking the Canadian Rockies.
That is awesome! I had set out to complete what I wanted to do, but what I didn't actually realize what was occurring for me was a very different journey, more of an internal journey, and that was that no matter what the results of my genetic testing would be, that I would be okay with that. And that I was living. I realized that before that I wasn't actually living. I was in this place of just being stuck with all the just overwhelmed with grief, and I didn't realize how paralyzed that I actually was, and that
And this brought you back to
it brought me back to myself.
On October 27th, 2013, Deborah's debut film, The Life Cycle Project, premiered at the Banff International Mountain Film Festival.
I wouldn't have come to this place without her. I remember after my mom passed away, I was like, if I don't do something healthy, I'm going to do something destructive. And I never looked back.
My most recent book is called Pure Land, and Pure Land came about from a story I wrote for Backpacker magazine about a woman named Tomomi Hanamura that was murdered in Grand Canyon on the Havasupai Reservation. And her murderer was an 18-year-old Havasupai Native American kid who lived on the reservation. And that happened when that hit the news that this woman from Japan had been murdered in this really popular hiking destination. I was like, told Backpacker, I think we should do a story on this. And Backpacker, they were like, we don't write about murder. We write about like the best 10 trails in Grand Canyon or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but like, should people go hiking there? Like, we need to find out what's going on down there.
To find out more, Annette headed to the crime scene where the investigation was underway.
So law enforcement were like, don't be down there. Women shouldn't be down there alone. And that was kind of annoying to me because I felt like, are you blaming her for getting murdered? Like that was really kind of eating away at me. I was like, she deserves to not be blamed for getting murdered. I want to tell her story. So I had that kind of drive to like dig deeper. So she wasn't known as this woman that was killed because she was hiking alone. Like that's so bogus.
To learn more about Tomomi and her life and culture, Annette traveled to Japan. She met with Tomomi's family, spending time with her father, cousin, and even her American rescue dog, Blues.
Being with her family, they gave me her journal, her diary, which was all written in English. And no one had ever read it before, because it was in English. So, it had just been kept in this envelope And her dad just handed it to me and said, "This is for you." And I'm like, "Are you sure you don't want to keep it?" And he's like, "No, it's in English. It wasn't meant for me." And he's like, "You have it." And so can you imagine what it would be like if you're writing your journal thinking no one would ever see it, and then the first person that sees it is this complete stranger from another country that's like reading about your most intimate thoughts and experiences. It was an honor, to be handed that, and so to treat it with the greatest respect. And so I did try to treat telling her story with the greatest respect. When I came back from Japan, I was like, all right, I'm going to write this book about Tomomi and Randy. And that was it. I was like, I'm just going to kick this thing out within 6 months and it's going to be done. And then I got the files from the FBI of Randy's confession. And as I looked more deeply into Randy and was reading notes that he wrote in his own hand when he was a kid in school, and read about how his father had been beating him, and then I listened to the audio of his confession, he described the murder, and there was part of me that was when I look back at my notes that I was taking, my handwriting was starting to look weird. Going back, it starts to look like a drunk person and then crazy person. Yeah, my handwriting was deteriorating. And so there was a kind of a cracking and falling apart that was happening before I was even aware of it. At the time was also starting to feel really anxious, and I was like, I don't know why I feel so anxious. And I was like, I'm going to start meditating. I was meditating and sitting down and trying to get to that state where your mind stops. For me, my mind is going all the time, like hamster in a wheel, but it would all of a sudden sort of stop. And is the minute that happened, this really dark, horrible thing that shook me to the core. And I was like, what was that? And I'd stop meditating and I thought, wow, this murder, I must be having weird visions about the murder, and this is starting to kind of get to me in a weird way. But I was like, but I may have a promise to do this book. I promised Tomomi's father, and I'm going to do this and power through. And then I started having nightmares, and then I just stopped sleeping. My body was just you're not sleeping anymore, and because you can't have those nightmares. And so I went for 10 days without sleeping. I literally thought I was going to die. And so I had zero psychological reflection until I was in the emergency psychological facility here. And the psychiatrist came in. He's he just looked at me and he said, "Have you ever been abused as a child?" And I said, "Yes." And I was like, what just came out of my mouth? I couldn't believe that I said yes. I don't know, I'm so glad that I said it, and I'm so glad that I admitted it, but it was, so I feel emotional talking about it, but.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, man.
It was just so, it was an amazing thing, but to say that meant that, I was going down this road, and all of a sudden, I took a hard right turn, and my whole life changed after that. All of a sudden, I have a serious psychological, emotional issue here to deal with that I was most worried about. How is this going to affect my ability to parent my son? I wasn't thinking about the book. I was like, I guess I'm going to put this book off to the side for now, because it sort of scares me to think that the book, investigating that story, brought me to this point. But I also didn't think, I was like, I know I'm going to continue with the book. I didn't question that, but I was I wasn't sure how. So I had to kind of look around and say, how am I going to do this? How am I going to move forward? And I feel I, as a child, had a really strong connection to what I think of as the creator, like the creator of the earth and that higher power. And that was in nature. And, being in the woods when I was a kid was like my medicine. And so when I was like really upset as a child, leaving the abusive environment of my house and being out in the woods with my dog was like reset me, and I felt like totally embraced by the trees and the wind, which is all around me right now. And I felt like taken care of. And I returned to that. And I had to basically turn my healing over to that higher power, to like the force that created the earth and the trees and the wind, also was going to take care of me. And I had to just trust that. I definitely did like different therapies, like body therapies and, talk therapies, and community is definitely like, it's like you can't just be alone in the woods all the time. Like you need a supportive environment. And so yeah, I have like really good friends, and also, I sought out communities that were trauma support groups, and that was super helpful. Like to be in a room where like what I was saying happened to me was totally normal, and to have others say, yeah, you're feeling this way now, but I promise you it's going to get better because I have experienced the same thing, and I can be here to tell you now that you will get to where I am. And I felt so comforted by that. So being around others is really important. And also being aware of like staying away from people that aren't supportive, like not triggering yourself. And not everybody is the best person to be around. It's never like I'll be healed, but I have like, it's part of me, and like I've been able to cope with the symptoms, and improve my reaction to, when I get triggered, and it's greatly enriched me as a person, I feel like.
After spending some time away from the book, Annette got back to writing. A dear friend strongly suggested that Annette add her story to the book, since all three lives, Tomomi, Randy, and Annette, had now become part of each other's story. So with vigilance, Annette slowly began to add bits of herself to the book.
I am reborn. I'm a different person. I'm a totally different person. Like I wish Tomomi wouldn't have been killed, but if she was still alive, I would never have gone. I'm sure I never would have gone through, recognizing my own trauma, and I would have just lived my life in complete dissociation for the rest of my life, and I would have been shut down. And so I became a better parent. I was able to write this book that I feel like has helped people, and that's why I wrote it. And so I feel like there's so much good that has come out of it. In the early days when I was like rattled, by flashbacks and everything, and I was like, I felt compelled to just pull out her journal and go through her journal and read her words about how she was so moved, like as she walked, in the redwoods in Redwood National Park, and when she was in the Grand Canyon, and when she was like in the Tetons, and just what she said just really reminded me. It was almost like telling me again, like where to go. She's like, get out there, and I am so grateful to her for that.
I was diagnosed with cancer in summer of 2009. I had a very rare form of cancer called Synovial Sarcoma. Sarcomas are soft tissue cancers, so they don't affect a particular part of the body. It's considered to be all over your body, right? Sarcomas are in blood, they're in soft tissue. and it has like about a 65 to 70% mortality rate once diagnosed. And you're pretty much stage 4 as soon as you're diagnosed. Most times, a lot of times.
What stage were you?
I was definitely stage 4 when I was diagnosed. Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yep. Definitely not the easiest time in my life. It's easy to also kind of delve into a realm of kind of cutting your feelings off. Like every time anybody tells you something, you're like, whatever, I'm dying, Don't care about your new sheet set, Karen. You can't help it. And everybody else looks at you really weird with the weird face, So you're just trying to avoid people in general because you don't want them to look at you with pity, and then you don't want to be like an ass if you don't really want to hear about all their stuff that they're going to making plans for the future, and you're not capable of really doing that. I felt like I was letting a lot of people down, even though it clearly wasn't, even though it's clearly not your control, you think it is. But what if I went to the doctor sooner? Or what if I checked out my ankle when I sprained it that time? Or, it's just like all these things go in your head, and somehow that you're supposed to be able to control the situation that you can't control, or feel like you missed something along the way that led to this point.
Not only was Karima going through cancer treatment, or part of her leg was amputated, but she was also living with her abusive fiancé.
People don't understand what verbal abuse is. Being told, there are things like he said to me, nobody would want you like how you are now, and, basically telling me like, hey, you're amputated and you're in this stage of no one would date you, how you are now, basically saying you were so lucky. And then everything I did just wasn't good enough. But at the time I was just like, yeah, you're right, because I'm impaired, of course, nothing I can do will, gosh, I gotta really try really hard and try to make him as happy as possible. I also feel like he took advantage of my vulnerability and just tore me down constantly. But at the same time, I'm very thankful for him because I didn't really get the family support that I felt that I needed during that time, and he was all of that. And that also cost me on being incredibly dependable on him and his existence beyond monetary or financial.
This dependency also included being involved with his serial passions, which were constantly changing. But at the time, it was climbing.
Come to this gym with me. I'm taking this intro to climbing class or whatever. And so I learned how to belay that day. And then he was just like, oh, why don't you, try climbing? Even the climbing gym person was there. And I was just like, what? I don't think so. I was still in the chemo wig. I was probably in my first real prosthesis. It wasn't time then.
Yeah.
It clearly wasn't time then.
When did it become time?
When did it become time? I think it was after I went into remission, when the doctor said I was in remission. And then I started to think about recovery.
It took some time, but eventually, Karima left her fiancé.
Once I was separated and mind clear and everything, it was just such an elation to remove a lot of toxic people from my life so I can recenter myself.
Did climbing and getting into nature help that?
Oh yeah, immensely. I think especially my first trip out in Colorado at Estes Park was prolific because I was around other young adult cancer survivors, but I was in a place that separated me from everything I was thinking about. I could only think about what's in front of me.
How did you come up with the idea to start the group?
I didn't, because actually initially it was supposed to be my amputee support group's community event. They gave me a $500 auxiliary scholarship to lead the event for this month, because they do different bowling or dinner or something, and it's you always have an activity. And then I had to get enough amputees that in our program that was interested in doing it, and then they would give me the scholarship to do it. Yeah, I had 38 people with disabilities, 50 registered, like about an equal number of volunteers, and it was supposed to be a one-day event. We were going to do like 2-hour sessions through the course of these 6 hours, and then we had to turn it into 2 days because it was like more than we anticipated, and like, oh wait, we got to change this up, so let's make it 2 days. And some people signed up for both days. I didn't know that it was a big call for it. I really didn't know, because again, I had myself had been an amputee for maybe like 2 years, right? So I really didn't know that much about what para sports were available, or how long they've been around, or like that history of it. And so I didn't realize that I was doing something that was, like changing my area, or had an effect, or that people even wanted to do besides myself.
Adaptive Climbing Group now offers programs all across the U.S.
3 locations in New York City, the 4 in northern New York, the one in Chicago, the one in Massachusetts, 20 sponsored athletes average every year across the country. And so they look at me, and I do not at all embody someone who runs a rock climbing program at all, right?
But you do.
I do. And that's my favorite part. I feel like every year my travel increases more and more to do events or be on committees, or, I recently got appointed to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force that they just created for USA Climbing. I'm working on Climb the Hill with Access Fund and American Alpine, seeing if I have any effect and what it'll do, and will I take more of a step forward. I feel like on the committee I'm kind of back here a little bit, and then I'm just trying to get the flow, because I'm just used to directly working with people with disabilities, instead of like making opinions and affecting decisions that will again represent and affect them, in a more political way. And so that's a new venture for me. I'm like advisory councils for climbing festivals, to like be more mindful of the language they use, and more information in their communication of events, so that people with disabilities would feel welcome, if they wanted to take part or not, and make the decision for themselves.
Do you feel welcome when you do events?
I feel like I am singularly welcomed.
Yes.
Because they know me.
Yes. But if somebody, let's say...
Just me is singularly welcomed.
Yes.
No, I don't think so. Not at all.
And why do you think that is?
Because, it's just, it has to do with stereotypes. And I feel like there's a long history of abuse of people with disabilities that is very silent. And people are scared. The ADA Act only came in 1990. That's not a long time. The word privilege. I kind of hate it. I kind of hate the way it's used in the last 3 or 4 years. They're like, people need to leverage their privilege, or this group of people needs to leverage their privilege for this underprivileged group of people. I was like, well, thanks for placing me down here by just your language at all, even though your intentions are like nice and good and pure and one of helping, puts you in a savior mode. We're not looking for Jesus Christ. We're looking for an even playing field. So if that's the case, neither of us are privileged. We all have different abilities that are unique to our group, our sex, our physicality, our melanin. You have to use SPF 50, I can get by with SPF 30. If I ask you to go pick up a heavy suitcase, you go pick up the heavy suitcase, strong person. If I can walk further than you, then you stay here while I go check that out, scout out that route for you. Like, so what? There are like different things that we're capable of doing that conclusively can create like the most amazing trip. And if that's the case, then we should be sharing our abilities so that we all can achieve what we need to achieve in life, not leveraging our privilege. I feel like there's a group of people making a difference, and I'm just facilitating that. I don't think it's me by myself making a difference. There's no way. There's so many skill sets I don't have that the rest of my team does have. No being can live without something else. Flowers can't live without water. A stream can't live without a rock for direction. Fish can't live without plankton. Like, there's no way anything is alone, no matter how many times you say it. I think we need to make sure we recognize all the stuff that is around us that make it happen.
I will never forget the day because I had relatives, 2 aunts and an uncle had come into the shop. And it was just one of those situations. I was at the counter and it was a Sunday and it was busy, and I did my typical greeting, and then I took a double take and I'm like, oh, it's my Aunt Lorraine and Aunt Sylvia. What are they doing here? And it was just, you could see a look on their faces that, like, something's not right. And then they came over, and I don't remember exactly how they said it, but like, your dad's gone. He's cutting a tree and he's gone. And all of a sudden it was just like crack. I know I don't know what sound I made, but then all of a sudden it's just like I'm pretty much in a pile of tears. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is not how it was supposed to go. You don't even really know what to do or think. It's like, okay, so all of this happened, and then I have to deal with all of this other stuff that, I've never dealt with it before. You don't have classes or anything in terms of, these are the steps that you should take next. It's like, everything's like, okay, you're an adult, making decisions on, if he was going to have a wake or not. We hadn't talked about that. I knew he wanted to be cremated. Like, crap. I'm like, what do I do if I make the wrong decision? So I really took the moment to sit and think about the times that I was with my dad at wakes. I didn't know until after we basically had kind of a celebration of life at Uncle Bill's. And he told me that Dad had agreed to that. He didn't want to wake or anything like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. So one of the major things that I had to deal with was, I'll say my dad was a collector of many things. And I spent more time in his house when he had passed away than I did when he was alive. And a lot of, I would say, something that I had to deal with was just kind of seeing how he lived. I can understand more that my dad prioritized the things that he loved doing most in life, which was being outdoors. So his living quarters wasn't necessarily the best. I mean, it basically looked very depressed. The only running water was in his bathroom, a sink and a shower and a toilet. Just wondered, like, why wasn't this ever finished? I mean, he didn't have a kitchen. It was traumatizing in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It made me really, really sad. And I had so many, there's so many questions that there would never be full answers to. It sucked also to learn how much he loved me and was proud of me, and just how happy he was with my mountain biking and everything. To hear all of that pride from other people after he died. It's like, you know, but you don't know until afterwards. The first few times that I went out for rides just were really hard, because it's like, I'm out here doing something that, in theory, yeah, my dad didn't mountain bike, but he liked being outdoors in nature, and everything about the woods made me think of him. Hearing the birds and seeing deer and smelling the smells, and just, it was tough. It took me several rides before I could go out for a mountain bike ride and not cry. After big storms and such, I would go out and I would look and see if there were downed trees. I spent a lot more of my rides basically doing trail scoping than riding my bike. The grief thing, I don't know that I've actually went through the entire grieving process. I feel I had to put a lot of that to the side just because I had so much crap I had to deal with. You don't have time. I mean, you're still working a job 6 days a week and you're having to do everything on top of that. But there were definitely stages. There was one point where I really got mad and I blew up. And I took my favorite helmet and I just threw it down as hard as I could at the bike shop floor and totally cracked it. And it felt really good. It surprised me. I really wasn't expecting anger to be part of grief. And after that, things kind of calmed down a bit. But I still don't really feel like I had like that ending cry, if you will.
Josie began to use her mountain biking platform of Josie's Bike Life to give voice to her grief, her loss. She got real and opened up with utter rawness.
What's helped me is being able to connect with some folks that have had similar but different circumstances, sudden tragic losses of their parent. I think my writing about my experience and the feelings that come with it, all my hopes are that it helps at least one person feel like they're not alone when it comes to something like that, and it's okay.
Slowly over time, Josie began to see bits of healing within her grief, a few moments of peace and reflection within the constant hurt.
My dad had a little handsaw that I ultimately decided, this would be perfect for helping to saw branches and that sort of thing. So I will say that it's been pretty therapeutic in a way. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like my father's daughter. Here I am, like cutting a tree. I mean, life, I look at it more with how my dad passed away. I mean, he was doing something he loved. He was outdoors doing something that he felt was purposeful. And life, there's so much of life where I know it's just kind of the run of the mill. You get up, you go to work, it plays over and over and over again. And for me, I just looked at it from, I want life to be a more enriching experience. And just live life as best as I can each day.
One day we were out for a hike. I just moved here from Ontario, which has literally no mountains. And I had moved here to be closer to Jenny because she was going through a super hard time. She was in a really bad abusive relationship. And so I had moved here to help her get out of that relationship. And going to the mountains was like her therapy. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go to the mountains. I'd never been in the mountains before. And so we were not experienced by any means. So we borrowed our kids' backpacks. In our packs was beef jerky and beer and bunny ears because it was Easter. We trek up and we're on this ridge and we see this group of women coming down from a higher point. And they were decked out, hiking poles. I was like, who hikes with poles? No, everyone should hike with poles. I know that now. And Jenny's like, I'm gonna go talk to those women and see what's up there and maybe we should go up there. I said, okay. And she bounds over to them, bunny ears on her head, beer in her in her grasp. And she's like, what's up there? Hi, what are you doing? And so happy. And they looked her up and down and they were like, you can't go up there. You should just go home. What are you even doing on top of this mountain? So we felt terrible. We felt like we shouldn't be in the outdoors. Honestly, we were like discouraged. We actually turned around and like went back down. And on the way down and on the way home, we got to talking and we're like, we're pretty confident, like outgoing women. If we feel this way, like how many other women must feel intimidated to get in the outdoors? And that's really where Women Who Explore was born.
Lindsay and Jenny started an Instagram account capturing the sisters and their love for the outdoors. And they started to gain some serious traction. So the sisters decided, why don't we run a weekend getaway? They had no idea who would show up, if anyone. But to their surprise, 22 women arrived for a weekend of kayaking, canoeing, and paddleboarding at a cabin on the lake in the Canadian woods.
We pull into the cabin and the lake is frozen solid. And we had people bringing their stand-up paddleboards and their kayaks and their canoes and frozen solid. Like, I can't even make this up. Like, just frozen. So Jenny and I did go out there with some axes. Like, right off the dock. And then we'd get enough that we could put a boat in. And then we'd go out in the boat and we'd, like, continue to, like... and we ended the night off with this like beautiful campfire where everybody sort of went around the circle and like shared like their deepest, darkest stories. And everybody was crying and supporting each other. And it was like, we called it the magic. We had never, ever, ever expected that something like that would happen when you bring a group of strangers together. That's sort of like the thing that we've held on to is like we create the magic between women. So in last, I guess, February, I started to feel just not myself. Things were going awry medically for me, and I'm pretty healthy. I went to doctor's appointment after doctor's appointment and really pushed, I really pushed to find out what was wrong. So one doctor said I had menopause, another doctor told me there was nothing wrong with me, another doctor told me I had allergies, and it took a lot. It wasn't until I lost the vision in my left eye temporarily that somebody finally took me serious. We know what it is now. It's called Optic Neuritis, and it is one of the first signs of MS. But at the time, they were kind of like, you have optic neuritis. 50% of the time it ends in MS, but you don't have any MS in your family. So you probably don't have MS. Of course, I go home and I'm like Googling all the symptoms, right? Because that's what we all do. Thank you, Internet. And so I went to my own doctor and I honestly basically had to lie. And I said, the ophthalmologist says I have to have an MRI. And she was like, oh, I don't know. Like there's no MS. And I was like, I'm not leaving until I get a referral to have an MRI. I said, because there is something wrong with me. Like, I know it. I feel it. Either that or I'm crazy. For a long time, like while I was waiting for that MRI, I'm like, am I just crazy? Like, am I just making this up in my head that something's wrong? And I don't know, like how we've been like society has like made us think that like for some reason we think we're crazy. Like women are crazy. Like, no, we're not.
Finally, Lindsay had an MRI.
The doctor called me and they're like, we're referring you to a neurologist that specializes in MS. And I was like, so, like, could you let me know the results, like, over the phone then? Because if you're sending me to an MS neurologist, like, I'm pretty sure it means I have MS. And they're like, no, so we don't give results over the phone. I was like, okay. Honestly, my first feeling was relief that there was something wrong with me. And that sounds so crazy because like I wouldn't wish this on anybody, but like I was so relieved that like I wasn't making things up in my head. Weird, eh? Like that's crazy. So I think the first thing was relief, and the second, I was honestly devastated. Like beyond devastated, and I do not show my emotion well, like at all. And so I like called my sister and I was like, so yeah, like I have MS. And she was like, she like burst into tears and I was like, it's okay. Like, don't cry. But inside I was like really, I think, devastated. I don't think it really hit me right away either. And I guess I like felt a bit sorry for myself. You know, I've been so healthy. And I think it was like almost like confusion because like I really have never had anything wrong with me. And we haven't dealt with a lot in our family either. Like our family's been really healthy. We don't have like aunts and uncles dying of cancer or nobody in our family has MS, like nobody that we can trace back. And so I was like, why did I get this? Like, why me? So when I found out, Jenny and I went off Instagram for 30 days. And that was one of the reasons behind it was we just didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I was like, what if I wake up tomorrow and my legs don't work and I can't run the trip that I was supposed to run? Or what if I'm on a trip and something happens? Like there's so many what ifs, and MS is this terrible disease that like it affects every single person differently and you have no idea how it's going to affect you. And there's no signs. You know, the doctor was like, you might be fine for 40 years. He's like, but you might wake up tomorrow and not be able to get out of bed. He's like, and there's no rhyme or reason. It was horrible. You know, Jenny was like a huge person for me. She was like, listen, like, okay, we know that you have this, but like, instead of like sitting there and being like, well, what if, why don't you just go live your life? And so we're open and honest with people and we tell people that you have MS and they can choose whether to join your trip or not. Okay, so you have MS and you're on a trip and something happens. She's like, don't you think all of those women would jump in to help you? In a heartbeat, they would. And you need to start like checking the things off your list that you want to do. And I think it was like a real mind shift for me because I'm telling you, I could have got sucked in so quickly to that like deep, dark depression of like, what if I'm not going to do anything because what if something happens? But like, that is no way to live your life.
Even with her new mindset, Lindsay still wasn't quite ready to tell others.
I went to Iceland to run a trip with 12 women for a week. And we were in the car on the second last day and somebody was talking about their health and I just opened up and shared sort of what I was going through. And honestly, I could not have asked for like a more supportive group of women in my car. Like they like laughed with me, cried with me. It was magic. I think part of the reason why I felt brave enough to tell our audience was because of their reaction. I also didn't realize like the outpouring of love and support. A lot of women, we feel now like really open up on these trips about the health challenges, you know, no matter how big or how small. And I don't know if they open up any more now than they already did. When we first started this company, women just, when they get together around a campfire, you know, they just open up and they're vulnerable, and that's what makes us keep on doing these trips. And I mean, I'd like to hope my story has helped women open up or come forth or reach out to somebody, but in all reality, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I wrote a lot when I was a kid. I did. I didn't have any like designs on becoming a writer or anything, but I just like, I was good at it from a young age, and I kind of kept writing off and on, but it didn't really sort of take off until I was living in Alaska. And I had been living in McCarthy, which is a little town in the middle of Wrangell St. Elias National Park. And I had all these crazy adventures there. And so at University of Alaska, I had a professor who said, you should write about this stuff. Like, you could sell stories. And so I just started writing when I was there, and slowly but surely I built, worked really, really, really hard, and slowly just built a full-time career traveling the world and writing.
Tracy wrote an essay for Backpacker magazine in 2007 entitled The Source of All Things, and this essay would eventually develop into a book.
I like to separate out the essay and the book. It was two completely different writing experiences and two different emotional experiences. For the essay, I hiked with my stepfather into the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho to basically question him about my memories of what had happened versus the narrative that everybody else believed about what had happened. I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse that went on for years and years, from the time I was like 8 to 14 and I ran away from home. And my family sort of adopted this narrative about it, that it happened twice. Once in a trailer on a camping trip when I was 8, and told my mom, and my dad said, "What are you talking about? That was a dream. That did not happen." And then once again when I was 14 on the night I ran away. When in actuality, it was happening, pretty consistently throughout that time. And no one believed me. I tried to tell people. I told my brother. I told my grandmother. I told my brother's girlfriend. But I think they just felt totally helpless. Like, what do we do? My parents stayed married after the abuse, and they stayed in my life. I chose to stay in their lives. But there just came a point I was really depressed when I was around 36, 37, and I tied it back to the abuse. It was just like time in my life, I think, for me to be like, okay, I have to process this shit. And I had questions. I didn't know the full extent of what had happened because I had adopted this narrative that everybody else did because it was easy. Mm-hmm. But I knew in order to keep progressing as an adult and maturing and growing up and being a good mom, that I had to process and know the whole story, as painful as that sounds. I just said, we have to talk about this. And I don't want to do it at my house, and I don't want to do it at your house. I want to go back to the source. I want to go to the place that it happened. And the reason I wanted to do that is because that's where I feel most powerful and empowered. In nature, in wilderness, and particularly in Idaho. That's my place. That's where I grew up. The wilderness there formed who I am. And my stepdad also formed who I am because he's the person who gave me all of the amazing experiences that I had in Idaho in the wilderness when I was a kid that then led to me being the person that I am now. That was the thing that made me feel like I couldn't just write him off. I couldn't just cut him out of my life because he introduced me to the things that I love most in the world. So I decided to hike with my dad into the Sawtooths. To his credit, he was like, yeah, let's go do it. And I didn't know what was going to happen. All I knew is that we were going to go to this place called the Temple, which is a 3-day hike into the Sawtooths. We talked about it here and there on the hike, but a lot of the hike was silent. It was harrowing, completely re-traumatizing. The whole time I was like, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Could he harm me? Am I going to kill him? We went to the temple, and he answered the questions that I have, which were, when did the abuse start? When did it end? How many times did it happen? And why did you do it? Now, I knew when it started. I knew when it ended, but I wanted him to confirm the memories that I had. And the hardest part about this story is that I, in my mind, had a number. Like, oh, it happened a dozen times. And I am blowing it out of proportion. And how messed up can I be from that? Like, 12 times your dad abuses you, what's the big deal? Move on. When in reality, the number that he told me was much higher than that. So hearing that was incredibly painful. And then hearing why was also incredibly painful. And then having to hike back out of the Sawtooths with this new information and with him was almost unbearable. I came out of the Sawtooths and I remember sitting in the airport And I called my editor at Backpacker and I just broke down. I was like, I honestly really don't think I can write about this. I can't. Like, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know what to do. And I knew once I wrote this essay, like, everyone was going to know this whole new thing about me that would blow my exterior persona, just shatter it. It took me a while to figure out how to have the courage to do it. Once I started writing and once I got past the initial, like, what do I do here? Then it was the most amazing writing experience I had had up to that point in my life. Because all of a sudden I could see myself as a character in a story, and I could see the little girl that I had once been, and I had so much compassion for her and so much love for her, and she was a badass. And I was like, you were a cool little girl in Idaho, like this scrappy little thing that got fucked over, and you dealt with it. And so it was this cool experience of me almost mothering her and letting her shine in this story. There's power and magic in writing about something authentically that's that difficult. I gave it to my dad to read. He went somewhere like hidden and read it, and, you know, I thought he was going to refute some stuff, like, oh, it didn't happen that way, I don't know, I don't remember it, blah, blah, blah. And he didn't. And again, I keep saying to his credit, but he was ready to take the heat for what he had done. And I think that's commendable. A guy from the Washington Post read it, and he showed it to a literary agent in New York, and they called me and they said, you know, this is so amazing. Do you want to write a book about it? And I was like, I don't know. Let me think about that for a little while. And ultimately, I thought it would be a good idea. I thought it had enough value to others that it would be worth whatever discomfort I felt doing it to put it out in the world. It was very difficult, yeah. You know, my husband built me a writing studio separate from our house, and every day I'd have to march away from the laughter and hugs and warmth of our family and go into a place that was incredibly dark and painful and stressful. That was my path. That was the path that I was on, and I had to complete it. And there were times when I thought that I would give the advance back. I thought I couldn't do it. I had insomnia for so many nights. And so to kind of take breaks from it, I would just put it aside for weeks at a time, and I would just have to go be in nature and just like burn it out of my body. Literally, physically, like sweat it away. And then come back and be a mom and be a wife and take care of my family and write this terrible story. Survivors are like everybody else. You know, we're all just doing the best we can with this horrible fate that we were given in life. And society loves to put survivors in different silos and different definitions and say, oh, survivors are this way. Oh, survivors are that way. Well, I've been many, many types of a survivor over my life. And it's just a continuum. I'm not done right now. Just because I'm in a good place with it right now doesn't mean that I will not have to go back and excavate and work on some other element of it down the line. And, you know, you have a kid, and then some whole other thing comes up. Or you get injured, and some other element of it comes up. Because it's such an impactful experience when someone takes your power away and abuses you and violates your body, the one constant I would say about it is that it's always there, and it defines on a very core level who I am. And that's not bad. But I don't walk around at the same time saying I'm a sexual abuse survivor. Like, that's not part of my everyday narrative. My narrative is like, let's have fun. Let's like live and have a great life and be in nature and raise our kids and don't hurt anyone and don't hurt me. The biggest win in this whole scenario was writing that essay. Because for the first time, that little girl who grew up into the awkward, crazy teenager who went through all kinds of drug stuff and, you know, was not the nicest person for a while, had a champion. It was like, I totally love you. You are awesome. And I'm sorry that nobody helped you. I knew I had to leave Idaho and leave my family and leave my situation, or I never would have started on a path toward healing.
The English Channel, as I got into it, it was crazy how many more parallels there were. And it was like this respect for nature, but also trusting yourself and believing that what you're doing is the right thing.
When I'm sharing parts of myself and it's relatable to somebody else, then, you know, we're all healing together.
I was in 100 pieces on the ground, and I had to put myself back together, you know, as a broken person, and which is not a bad thing. I feel like being a broken person makes you so much more open to life.
You have to do what feels good, no matter what. I don't care if someone else tells you it's a bad idea or it's not going to work. What do you feel?
The thing that I share with my dad is the love of the outdoors and nature, and I think what he was most happy about was that I found a way to do it my own way, as opposed to doing it how I thought I should.
I have no idea where that doubt would even come from, but it was there. And I think everybody that has an illness that goes undiagnosed feels that way. Like, am I just crazy? Like, does my leg really hurt this much? Or, like, does it actually hurt this much?
That's the pilgrimage. And that's the 40 days in the desert. That's like all this stuff that is all around us in our, you know, mythology and our stories and but it's true. It's true. If you're a person who resonates with the natural world, what else are you going to do except for like be in the natural world? Where else do you heal except for in the natural world?